So I'm the Sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, which is located between Phoenix and Tucson. There's only 15 counties in Arizona, so very large counties. Our county is the size of the state of Connecticut land-wise, 5,400 square miles. We've got about 600 plus employees and a budget of around $60 million that we work with. How did I get into law enforcement? A friend, a neighbor. I was a businessman, didn't come from a law enforcement family. As a matter of fact, nobody in my family that I know of has been a cop. Nobody in my wife's family. I was married, 5 kids, had my own business. Had a neighbor talk me into going on a ride along, which was at Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian Community. Went on that ride along. We had a call where a guy had found his 14-year-old daughter with a 20-year-old guy. And so they get into a little scuffle. Guy runs out the back. We show up. We're out there looking for him. I don't know why, but they let me out of the car and I'm armed with a flashlight and courage. I see this old abandoned travel trailer behind the house. And I look in the window and I see amongst all the trash and debris and clothes, I see what I think is a quarter size of skin. I'm over there and I tell these guys, hey, I think he's in here. Well, they go in and sure enough, he's under there. They drag him out, rough him up, tase him, put him in cuffs. I went home that morning and told my wife, hey, I'm gonna be a cop. 6 months later, I was in the academy and started my career in law enforcement. I was 34 years old when I did that. You know, the first 4 years, I wasn't sure what we were gonna get. I expected a different presidential outcome in 2016 and was pleasantly surprised to see that the person, President Trump won. And I think it was kind of like a stay of execution because I could see under the last administration, that's why I ran for sheriff anyway. Under the administration of Biden and Obama, I could see their undermining of the rule of law, the deterioration of it, the concerted effort through the media and politicians to take away that trust in law enforcement in the community. I didn't want to stand by and not do anything about it, so I ran for sheriff. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that we had President Trump come in the first 4 years. And it was very different. We saw people flourishing in the community, home sales, businesses coming in. We were able to work hand in hand with the federal government and making sure we could help them achieve their mission, which was securing the border. And then that changed halfway through. My second term has not been like that. Towards the end of my first term, we dealt with COVID. COVID was tough, but I believe firmly in God, family, freedom, the Constitution, and that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. I could not see the justification of basically what I viewed even then was, a severe flu being the reason as to why we would shut down or put the Constitution on the back burner. When the governor tried to extend the stay-at-home order, the lockdowns, I said, no, we're not doing it. And here in Pinal County, we believe in freedom, the Constitution, and we supported the people's rights to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government was out telling people who was essential and who wasn't. But in the minds of every American, every father, every mother who was putting food on the table, we all thought our jobs were essential. I didn't think it was the government's place to determine whose job was essential and what industries were essential. To everybody, their industry was essential. We kept it open as much as we could here. I wasn't for the mask mandates, and we never had a mask mandate here. I never required those masks here at the sheriff's office for my deputies, and we didn't require the vaccines when that came about. And so those were some tough things to deal with, but for me it was easy because it was impeding on freedom. It was impeding on people's right to practice their religion. It was breaking families. And so it went against my 3 core values of God, family, freedom. The left likes to use it as a negative term towards me. What I believe in is I think every sheriff should be a constitutional sheriff. I think every elected official should be a constitutional elected official. I've had several media outlets come to me and use this as like, well, you're considered a constitutional sheriff, as if that's a negative. What you should be asking is all the other elected officials why they are not following the Constitution. We all swore the same oath. sheriff, governor, whoever it is, we all swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. So the question shouldn't have been posed to me as to why I was following the Constitution. It should have been posed to them as to why they were not. I took my oath seriously. I take the Constitution seriously as the supreme law of the land. I wasn't gonna get bullied out of that. Yeah, look, being a guy that believes in the rule of law I think it's the backbone of America. The Founding Fathers understood it. You know, the very first charge of the Constitution, before you even got into the Bill of Rights and the Articles, in the very preamble, the Founding Fathers laid out some things. And the first was, you know, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. It was the very first thing that they said that we needed, because they understood the importance of the rule of law. It's what makes us different from all these other countries across the world, is our ability to have a functioning rule of law. That's changing. And we're seeing people based on race or religion or your social ideologies where they're getting a pass and other people are being held accountable. And that's what happens when you undermine the rule of law. Look, my son, he had his troubles. He had a drug issue, and we were trying to work with him. We said, you can't drive our cars. We were at a charity event one day, and he calls us and said he had hit a guy on a bike. We showed up to the scene, and fortunately, you know, the guy survived, but, you know, he definitely was hurt. And, you know, that broke our hearts. It broke his heart. Our son was very, you know, it hurt him a lot to know that he hurt somebody. But the hardest thing was I went and checked on the guy, came back to my son, checked on my son, and then looked him in the eye and said, I'm sorry, but I have to leave you. I can't be here because if I'm here, they're gonna say that I in some way influenced this case. We called a different agency to come out. They did the case. And ultimately my son was held accountable and served 6 months in jail, in my jail. You know, you wanna know how you treat your inmates? Put your own son in your own jail. You'll find out just exactly how you treat your inmates. But fortunately, we treat our inmates with dignity and respect, and my son was able to serve his time. But yeah, look, rule of law extends to everybody. But I think ultimately as he became clean, it helped. I think that was one of the catalysts to getting him clean, and he had been clean for a long time and still would be to this day, but we lost him. That was a catalyst to that. And it was, I think anytime somebody has to be held accountable, that puts a strain on it. You know, that's part of being a leader or an elected official, is you have to make decisions that are uncomfortable or that put people at a what would be perceived as a disadvantage, but you're not doing it maliciously, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And ultimately, I think when you follow that Constitution or the law, things work out. And I think in the long run, he saw that. We have a saying in here that no success can compensate for failure in the home. And look, running for office has an impact on your family. You know, I think part of, you know, what happened to my son was during that time I was running for sheriff, because you spent a lot of time away from home and that was at a very valuable time in teenage years of my children's lives. And so there's a sacrifice that is there. Having said that, my family, we love America. And we understand that this country has been built on sacrifice, people sacrificing lives and fortunes, particularly the Founding Fathers, the amount that they dedicated and sacrificed for America. And many of them never experienced the America they were building. We did, but many of them were made those sacrifices. We're at a place in this country now where we've lost our way a little bit. And we need some men and women that will stand up, that understand the value of these things and put those things first. We looked at this country and we said, hey, look, we need some people to show up and help. We looked at the border, the crime, the economy, national security. And all those things were things that were right in my wheelhouse, that I've spent a career dedicated to fighting and to trying to keep our community safe from these things. Running a large agency with a large budget and keeping my community safe from outside influences. And when people started talking about maybe running for the US Senate and taking a step to that level, our initial thought was no, that's not on our plans. But eventually we started feeling very compelled to do it. You know, we lost our children in a DUI accident. And then I wasn't interested in doing anything. But when I finally started coming back around, somebody said something and it sparked. And I realized there's no guarantee for tomorrow, and the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. So being the patriots that we are, and seeing the building burning to the ground, it wasn't in my nature to stand on the corner and do nothing. We decided as a family we would run in, and we would try to make a difference in whatever way we could. So I jumped into the U.S. Senate race in April of this year, and just been on that grind of running this campaign and trying to be that proven conservative fighter that Arizona needs. Yeah, I'm blessed. We've been married for 29 years, and I wouldn't have done half the things in my life had I not had the strong support of a very strong and courageous and patriotic woman as well. We've raised 5 great kids together, 3 grandkids. We've just been blessed. When we first started talking about Senate, this was a decision that my wife and I made together, because it takes a family to be able to do this. Law enforcement takes a strong spouse. The things you see and go through in law enforcement in this career has a very deep impact. It takes something from you you never get back. And so to have that spouse, not only from terms of law enforcement, but entering the political realm, and then even digging down and doubling down even deeper into the political realm, couldn't have done it without her. And I'm just blessed to have her, and it's probably the first thing I'll thank God for when I get to the other side. Oh man, there's no question we're in a battle of good and evil. That's what it is. You know, sometimes you can't make sense of some of this stuff, but when you talk about it from that perspective, it is a battle of good and evil. And the way we make sense of it is our core values as a family and as Americans and what we believe in. That's what we fight for. There's criticism that comes with it. When you stand for what's right in a world that is pushing everything that's wrong, it comes with criticism. But Aristotle has a great quote. He says, the only way to avoid criticism in life is to do nothing, say nothing, or be nothing. Well, I refuse to not do anything. I refuse to not say anything when something's wrong, and I refuse to not be anything. I was sent here to this earth to be the best that I can be, and I owe it to God and my family to be the best man that I can be. And I owe it to my country to be the best patriot that I can be. Those are the things that drive me, and those transcend the critiques and the hate that comes along with it. My wife has the best saying though. Ultimately, when you deal with the criticism and all of the things that come along with it, she has a saying that we said, we're just gonna bury these people in an avalanche of love and light. We focus on being positive, going out, dealing in hope, giving hope to people that are feeling frustrated and angry and hopeless. We're trying to give hope and show that you can still be a good person in this world and make a difference.
What else do you want people to know that they're not hearing in the mainstream media, or just a personal message to people who are watching this?
That America is still the greatest country in the world. The mainstream media and the politicians want to create problems. It makes media and politicians necessary. That's why they create conflict and problems. The truth is, we have our issues, but this is still the greatest country in the world. There is no other place to find freedom. Ronald Reagan said it best. If we lose it here, you can't go find it anywhere else. This is the Alamo of freedom. And so I'm trying to do my part to protect it. There are still great men and women, and frankly, the majority of Americans are like you out there listening today. 2 Kings 6:16, and he answered, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And that is the truth. Don't be misled. The majority of Americans are good, decent people who just want to be left alone and don't want the government to intrude. You know, running for the U.S. Senate, there's people like me that still believe in that will do everything that I can to pull the chain back on the government and let you live your life and experience the greatness of this country. You can come to sherifflamforsenate.com. Please come support, drop a check in there. You can put your credit card on there. Unfortunately, the money is the mother's milk of politics, and you can't run a campaign without it. And then if you live in Arizona, please get on there, sign my petition, get me on the ballot, and let's do what we can to get people that are true patriots back in Washington, D.C. that want to take this country back.